I should have turned around the second I saw the snow picking up on the highway, but I kept telling myself it would be worth it. That seeing the look on my mom's face when I showed up unannounced for Christmas would make the white-knuckled drive through a snowstorm worth it. That my sister, even with her usual attitude, would at least fake being happy to see me. That maybe, for once, I'd feel like part of the family again. Stupid, right? My name's Caleb. I'm 33 years old. And I guess I still hadn't outgrown the idea that family meant something deeper than shared blood and passive-aggressive group texts. Let me back up a bit. I live about 4 hours from my childhood home, which is a small town buried deep in the hills of Pennsylvania. After college, I moved to Pittsburgh for work and stayed, partially because of the job, partially because the longer I stayed away, the less I felt the need to go back. Still, I made the effort. Birthdays, Christmases, emergencies, I was there. I'd cover a broken-down car here, wire over some money for a hospital bill there. No one ever really asked. I just stepped in, quietly, because that's what you do for family. That's what Dad used to say before he passed away 5 years ago. Real family shows up, even when it's inconvenient. I guess I took that to heart more than the rest of them. My mom's getting older, and I worry about her more than I let on. My brother, Sean, lives 10 minutes from her, but barely visits. My sister, Jessica, lives in the same town and acts like it's a full-time job to be annoyed by everything I do. She's the youngest, 2 years younger than me, and always had this smug way of dismissing me like I was some weird uncle rather than her brother. Growing up, she was the golden child, and she knew it. Somehow always right, always defended. And I was the fixer. The one they called when something broke. The one they forgot to invite, but still expected to send money when the fridge stopped working or Sean's kid needed braces. I didn't mind helping. I really didn't. But lately, it had started to feel one-sided. This year, I hadn't planned on going home for Christmas. Work had been brutal. I'd just taken on a second consulting contract that was eating up my weekends. But then, on December 23rd, I got this call from Mom. Nothing dramatic, just a short, tired, "We'll miss you, sweetheart," and something about how quiet the house was going to be. She didn't say it to guilt me. I don't think that's her style, but it got to me. I could hear the loneliness in her voice, and something inside me shifted. Maybe I needed to be there, even if I wasn't really wanted. I packed a bag, loaded the trunk with the gifts I'd ordered online, and hit the road before sunrise on Christmas Eve. The drive was miserable. Thick sheets of snow blurred the road. The wipers couldn't keep up, and the heater in my car picked the worst possible time to start blowing lukewarm air. Still, I pressed on, inching through the final stretch of winding roads like I was navigating an ice rink. I even stopped at a gas station to grab a pie. Mom always loved cherry. I figured if nothing else, it would make her smile. The plan was simple. Show up around dinner time, surprise everyone, maybe stay the night if the road stayed bad. I didn't call ahead because, well, that was the point. A surprise. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something odd right away. The house was dark. No Christmas lights. No glow from the windows. Just this quiet, eerie stillness that made me check the time twice to make sure I hadn't gotten my dates wrong. I could see Jessica's SUV parked out front and a few other familiar cars, Sean's beat-up Toyota, and the newer sedan I'd helped co-sign for Mom last spring. So people were there. They were all there. Inside. Without me. I stepped onto the porch, my boots crunching the fresh snow. Balancing the pie in one hand and a bag of wrapped gifts in the other, I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Finally, I heard footsteps. The door cracked open just a few inches, and there was Jessica, her perfectly straightened hair pulled back in a ponytail, one eyebrow raised like she'd just seen a salesman on her porch. "Caleb?" she said, like she wasn't sure it was me. I smiled, genuinely excited despite the cold. Surprise. I figured I'd drive down last minute. Thought I'd spend Christmas with everyone. That's when she smirked. This little, amused smirk like I'd just said the dumbest thing in the world. Then she tilted her head and said, "Didn't you hear? We're keeping it small this year." I blinked. "What?" She shrugged like it was no big deal. "Just immediate family. It's been a weird year, you know? We didn't want to make a big thing out of it." I laughed once, a dry, confused sound. "Jess, I am immediate family." She didn't even respond to that. Just shifted her eyes over my shoulder, probably looking at my car, then added, "Anyway, we're about to eat. Hope the drive wasn't too bad." And then she closed the door. Not slammed. Not locked. Just closed. Like I was a neighbor who'd shown up a day too early for a block party. I stood there for a few seconds, waiting. I don't even know what I expected. Maybe someone else to come to the door. Maybe Mom, hearing my voice and hurrying over. But no one came. No lights flicked on. No laughter or music floated through the windows. Just silence and the sound of wind picking up. The pie slipped a little in my hand as I turned and walked back to my car. I put the gifts in the trunk, slid into the front seat, and sat there for a while, letting the heater sputter uselessly. My hands were shaking, but not from the cold. I hadn't even started the engine when my phone buzzed. A text from Jessica's husband, Mark. Probably meant for her. It just said, "What a clown." He actually showed up. I stared at it for a full minute. Read it. Reread it. My jaw tightened, but I didn't respond. Didn't ask for an explanation. I just smiled, a calm kind of smile that felt strange on my face. Then I opened my banking app. By the time I pulled out of the driveway, the snow was falling harder and the road ahead was empty. But in my mind, everything had just gotten very, very clear. It's funny how a moment can split your life in two. Like everything before it was just build-up and everything after it is reaction. That text from Mark, "What a clown." He actually showed up. That was the moment. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I just froze. Like some part of me had been expecting it, and finally, it had arrived. The confirmation. The proof that it wasn't all in my head. That no matter how many bills I covered, no matter how many times I dropped what I was doing to help, I was nothing more than a punchline behind my back. The drive back was a blur. I barely remember the snow or the road. Just white noise. At one point, I pulled over at a diner that was still open and just sat there with a cup of coffee going cold between my hands, thinking about everything. How long had it been like this? Had I just been too stupid to see it? Or did I keep choosing not to see it because the alternative hurt too much? Growing up, we weren't rich, but we had each other. At least that's what I used to think. Dad worked as a mechanic and made decent money, and Mom stayed home with us when we were little. I was the oldest, so a lot got dumped on me early. Watching Sean and Jess when they were sick, taking care of chores, running errands once I could drive. Dad appreciated it, always said I was dependable. I lived for that word. Dependable. It felt like praise and love wrapped in one. Even when Sean would flake out on responsibilities or Jessica would lie about doing her homework, I was the one picking up the slack. I didn't mind. I thought that's what being the big brother meant. That if I just kept being dependable, they'd respect me for it. But as we got older, it felt like dependable turned into invisible. Jessica started dating Mark in high school, and everyone treated him like the prodigal son. He was captain of the football team, went to Penn State on a scholarship, and had that used car salesman charm that made everyone eat out of his hand. Except me. I always got the sense that under the smiles and handshakes, he didn't respect me. Thought I was soft or boring because I didn't drink a six-pack at every family barbecue or talk about sports like it was a religion. But I kept it polite. For Jess, after Dad passed, things shifted hard. He'd been the anchor, the one who made sure things stayed fair. Without him, Jess started assuming more control over family gatherings. Sean drifted in and out, always with some excuse about work or the kids. And Mom, she just wanted peace. She never liked confrontation, so when Jess started steamrolling over plans and cutting corners, she let it slide. Everyone did. Everyone but me. I remember one year. This was 2 Christmases ago. I showed up with gifts I'd put real thought into. Stuff each of them had mentioned months prior. Jess opened hers, a handmade leather journal she'd once raved about during a call, and barely glanced at it before saying, "Oh, I already bought myself one." Sean didn't even unwrap his. Said he'd get to it later. Meanwhile, I watched Jess hand out gift bags full of cheap bath bombs and gas station wine and get praised like Martha Stewart. And the money stuff? That was another layer. I never made a big deal out of it. When Mom's car broke down, I paid the mechanic directly. When Sean got laid off and couldn't cover rent, I sent him $1,200 without a word. When Jessica and Mark bought their dream home and needed help with closing costs, I co-signed a $10,000 line of credit so they could qualify. They promised to pay it off quickly. That was 18 months ago. Last I checked, they were still making minimum payments. What I didn't realize, what I refused to let myself realize, was that every time I helped, they loved me a little less. Not more. Less. Because I became a utility. Not a person. The guy who wires money when asked. The guy who nods and smiles and never pushes back. A faucet they could turn on when things got tight. And the more I stayed quiet, the worse it got. There was a moment last summer that should have been my wake-up call. I'd driven down to visit Mom for her birthday. I took her out to her favorite Italian place, bought her flowers, even surprised her with a new tablet because she'd been complaining about her old one freezing up. She was glowing the whole night. But when we got back to her house, Jess and Mark were already there. No gifts, no dinner, just plopped on the couch, waiting. Jessica took one look at the flowers and said, "Wow, overcompensating much." I laughed, thinking she was joking. But she wasn't. She kept going. "You know, it's not a competition, Caleb. You don't have to keep trying to buy affection." I was stunned. I looked at Mom, expecting her to say something, to shut it down. But she just smiled awkwardly and changed the subject. And that was that. I left early the next morning, tablet still in its box on the coffee table. After that, I started pulling back. Just a little. I stopped checking in as often. Didn't volunteer help unless someone asked. But the requests still came, subtle, indirect. "Mom's heater's been acting up, but it's fine, we'll figure it out." Or, "The kids might not get much for Christmas this year, but they'll survive." Guilt disguised as casual updates. And every time, I caved. Sent money. Made calls. Booked appointments. Because dependable, right? Which brings us to this Christmas. After that drive, after that door in my face, after Mark's text, I needed space. I spent Christmas Eve in my apartment alone. Didn't turn on the TV. Didn't eat. Just sat there, trying to decide what this all meant. Not just what they did, but what I would do now. Because something inside me had shifted. Not snapped. Just realigned. I didn't respond to the text. Didn't call anyone. Just opened my banking app and started scrolling through every recurring payment tied to them. Jessica's line of credit? Paused. Auto payments for Sean's overdue utilities? Canceled. Mom's grocery card I'd been reloading every month since Dad passed? Gone. Not out of spite, but clarity. If I was a clown, then the circus was closed. The real breaking point, though, the moment that twisted the knife, came on New Year's Eve. I hadn't spoken to anyone since Christmas. No texts, no calls, just silence. I figured they'd either feel embarrassed or relieved. Probably the latter. But around 8 p.m., I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then another. And another. Finally, one came from Sean. I picked up. "Hey," I said flatly. "Dude." He breathed into the phone, like he'd just run a mile. "Where have you been?" "Busy," I replied. "What's up?" He hesitated. "Okay, look. I didn't know Jess was going to do that. I swear. We thought you weren't coming. That's what she told us. She said you had work. Did you ask me?" "No, but..." "So you believed her." Silence. Then he said, "Okay, but listen. Mark's freaking out right now." That got my attention. "Why?" Another pause. "He applied for a home equity loan last week. Got denied. Said his credit got dinged. Something about the co-signer backing out." I didn't say anything. "You took your name off the line of credit?" he asked, his voice rising. "Not yet," I said. "But I will. First thing next week." "Caleb, come on, man. That affects Mom too." That part. That made me laugh. "Funny. You guys sure didn't seem worried about how your actions would affect me." I was about to hang up when he added something that made my blood go cold. "She's selling the house." I froze. "What?" Jess said it was Mom's idea, but I don't know. It's happening fast. Like, already got a buyer lined up fast. Says they're moving Mom in with them temporarily while they renovate their basement. I didn't respond. My mouth had gone dry. Sean added, "I thought you knew. She said you were helping coordinate it. They were selling our childhood home. Behind my back. And they'd told Sean that I was involved. That I was helping. That was the betrayal. Not just the door. Not just the text. But the theft of my place in the family narrative. They were rewriting it in real time, cutting me out like I'd never existed. And Mom, she let them. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I started making a plan. And that's where things started to shift from heartbreak to something else entirely. When people talk about hitting rock bottom, they usually mean it in some dramatic way. Losing a job, going through a breakup, maybe standing in the rain with nowhere to go. But mine was quieter than that. No yelling. No crash. Just this hollow feeling in my chest as I sat in the dark, realizing I didn't belong to my own family anymore. That even when I bent over backward, gave more than I had, dropped everything to be there, they still found a way to leave me outside in the cold. Literally and figuratively. The night after Sean's call, I didn't eat. I didn't answer texts. I didn't watch the ball drop or raise a glass to the new year. I sat on the edge of my bed, trying to imagine what kind of person sells their mom's house out from under her. What kind of daughter takes over her mother's life and calls it help? What kind of siblings let the one person who always showed up be erased so easily? And for a while, maybe a few days, I let that version of myself die. The fixer, the helper, the dependable one. I stopped responding to emails that started with "sorry to bother you," but I silenced every family group chat. I deleted reminders to send monthly payments and auto transfers. I pulled the plug on everything that kept me orbiting their world. It hurt. I won't lie. There was grief in that, like I was mourning a death. Not of a person, but of a role I'd played so long. I didn't know who I was without it. But here's the thing about hitting bottom. Once you're there, there's no more pretending. You either stay flat, or you get up. And maybe for the first time, I didn't feel pressure to do either. I had the silence, the stillness, and I decided to just sit in it. Feel it. Let it wash over me. And in that quiet, I started seeing my life for what it really was. I wasn't happy. I'd spent so long trying to please people who barely noticed I was alive that I forgot what it felt like to do something just for me. My apartment was nice, but it looked like a hotel room. Clean, impersonal, bare. I had savings, investments, a solid career, but no hobbies, no real roots. I worked to keep other people afloat. I visited home to fill a chair no one asked me to sit in. So I made a decision. No more giving without boundaries. No more apologizing for not being what they expected. And definitely no more trying to earn a seat at a table I helped build. The first step was small, almost stupid. I bought a plant. A fiddle leaf fig, if you want specifics. I read somewhere that they're hard to keep alive, but something about that appealed to me. I wanted to prove I could take care of something that wasn't a crisis. That didn't drain me. That just existed and grew and asked for light and water and nothing else. Next, I took a week off work. I told my clients I was going offline, booked a cabin 2 hours north, and left my phone off for 5 days. No texts, no emails, just quiet. I brought books I never had time to read, cooked for myself, even went on hikes despite the snow. And it wasn't some instant epiphany, just slow, steady breathing room. Time to think without someone else's voice in my head. When I got back, I started taking inventory. Not just of my finances, but my life. I looked at my apartment and asked, what actually belongs to me? Most of it didn't. I sold furniture I didn't love, canceled subscriptions I didn't use, reorganized my schedule around things that gave me energy, not drained it. I even started going to the gym again, something I hadn't done since my 20s. At first it felt forced, but then it turned into a habit, and the habit turned into therapy. Funny thing, when you stop pouring everything into people who don't value it, you realize how much you have left to give yourself. Work picked up again in February. I landed a new long-term contract with a marketing firm out of Chicago. Big money, steady hours. They liked me so much they offered me a retainer to consult on the side. For the first time, I felt like my success wasn't tied to someone else's emergencies. It was mine, built from scratch. I also started reconnecting with people I'd lost touch with, not family, but old friends. College roommates. A guy I used to grab coffee with before he moved to Boston. I didn't unload everything on them. Just started checking in, texting first, inviting conversation. And slowly, a new circle began to form. One that felt lighter, less transactional. I'd love to say this fixed everything inside me, but that would be a lie. There were still bad nights. Nights I'd wake up from dreams of Christmas morning where everyone was laughing, and I was knocking on the door from outside. Nights I'd wonder if I should have fought harder for a place in that family. If walking away meant giving up or finally choosing myself. But each time, the answer felt clearer. Then, around March, something unexpected happened. Mom called. I stared at the screen for a good minute before picking up. I hadn't heard her voice in over 2 months. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, like nothing had happened. "How are you?" I paused. "I'm okay. Just working a lot." "You?" She hesitated, just for a beat. "It's been busy." That was new. Usually she'd fill the silence with awkward pleasantries. This time, it felt like she was treading carefully. "I heard you've been out of touch," she said. "Jessica said you were going through something." I nearly laughed. Going through something? Like I had the flu? "Yeah," I said calmly. "I needed space." Silence. Then she said, "You know, I didn't know you were coming for Christmas." I waited. "She told me you canceled. Said you had a big project due." I didn't even. Caleb, I didn't know you were at the door. My stomach sank. So when she closed it, you weren't there yet? No, she said quietly. I was upstairs. Mark told me it was a neighbor. Then I heard the door close and asked who it was. And Jess said, don't worry about it. I didn't speak. Just sat with that. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. Would it have changed anything? She didn't answer that. Instead, she said, they're selling the house. Jessica's been pushing it hard. Says I can't handle the stairs anymore. Can you? I get winded, sure, she said. But I'm not dying. And I never said I wanted to move. Then why are you? Another silence. Then, because I don't know how to stop her. She makes everything sound so reasonable. So helpful. She's not helping. I said, more firmly than I meant to. She's taking. I know, Mom whispered. But she's all I have here. The weight of that sat heavy between us. Because what she meant, but didn't say, was, I'm not there. Not anymore. That call stirred something in me. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But clarity. Mom wasn't evil. She was just tired. And Jess was the kind of person who steps in when someone's tired and convinces them that control is care. That manipulation is love. And I knew then, I had to do something. Not to win them back. Not to be the hero. But because there were lines that shouldn't be crossed. And Jess had crossed every single one. I began digging. Into the house. The deed. The financing. Turns out, Mom's name was still on everything. But Jess had filed paperwork for power of attorney 3 months earlier. I checked public records. The buyer's name? A company. When I traced back to Mark, they were selling Mom's house to themselves. That wasn't just shady. That was theft. And suddenly, my quiet little life of plants and gym sessions and self-reflection, it had a new mission. But before I acted, I needed to be sure. I needed to see it for myself. So I drove down. For hours, just like before. No storm this time. Just clear roads and a clearer head. I parked 2 houses down. Walked the street. Looked at the house I grew up in. Now with a for sale sign out front and an under contract sticker slapped across it. I didn't knock this time. Just pressed the bell and waited. The door swung open, and there she was, Jessica, wearing one of those smug, I already know I'm in control smiles. Her arms were crossed like she'd been rehearsing this moment in the mirror. Behind her, I could hear the dull clatter of dishes and faint laughter. Family gathering, probably. No one had mentioned it to me. Didn't expect to see you, she said with a tilt of her head. You must be lost again. I didn't answer. I just gave her a look she wasn't used to. Calm, focused, detached. I need to talk to Mom, I said. She's resting. Jess replied too quickly. It's been a stressful few weeks. I'm sure. I'll wait. She hesitated, probably sensing that whatever version of Caleb she used to steamroll wasn't the one standing in front of her now. She opened the door wider, clearly not wanting a scene on the porch. Mom was in the living room, curled up on the couch with a blanket over her knees. She looked older, more fragile than I remembered. Her eyes flicked up when she saw me and widened with something like guilt. But she didn't tell me to leave. Hi, sweetheart, she said, voice thin. I wasn't expecting. I held up a hand gently. Don't worry. I won't stay long. Jess hovered behind me like a bouncer guarding a nightclub. I need to ask you something, I said, keeping my tone soft. Did you want to sell the house? She hesitated. Jess said it's what's best, she finally muttered. And I suppose the basement setup will be easier. Fewer stairs. But did you want to? I pressed. Her lip trembled slightly. No, not really. That was all I needed to hear. I turned back to Jess. Power of attorney. You filed it in October. Her expression froze. You never told Mom, I said. You had her sign something without explaining what it meant. I didn't, she started, but I cut her off. You listed the house under an LLC. Mark's name is on it. You're selling it to yourselves. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. You don't understand how any of this works. Oh, I do, I said evenly. I also know it's fraud. Elder abuse, if someone wanted to get legal about it. Caleb, Mom whispered, sitting up straighter, alarmed. Jess scoffed. That's rich. Coming from someone who ghosted the family and suddenly thinks he's a white knight. You mean after you cracked the door in my face? I replied. After Mark called me a clown for showing up? After you lied to Mom about me helping sell the only place that's ever felt like home? I took a breath. Steady. Controlled. I'm not here to beg, I said. I'm here to undo the damage. That night, I drove back home with a fire lit under me. The fog was gone. Every step forward was now part of a plan. And the thing is, I had more tools than Jess realized. First, I dug through my old email archives and found Dad's original estate documents. When he passed, most of the property ownership had transferred to Mom. But there were clauses about how major financial decisions involving the home had to be co-signed if Mom was of questionable mental clarity, a clause Jess clearly tried to exploit with her power of attorney stunt. I contacted a lawyer I'd worked with on a freelance contract 2 years prior. Her name was Lillian, and she specialized in estate protection and elder law. I told her everything, laid out the deception, the rushed POA, the shell company, the sale, all of it. She listened quietly and then asked, "Do you have proof of any of this?" "I've got signed documents, property listings, voice recordings, and emails. I'm still working on the power of attorney signature comparison, but it looked forged to me." She exhaled. "That's more than enough to start with." Over the next few weeks, Lillian helped me build a case. We filed a petition for a temporary injunction to freeze the sale, citing fraud and coercion. Since I wasn't a direct heir to the deed but was financially entangled with the family, thanks to co-signed debts and payments, I had legal standing to contest the sale's legitimacy, especially if Mom testified that she hadn't knowingly agreed. That part worried me. I didn't want to drag her into a legal storm. But when I called her one afternoon and explained what Jess and Mark were doing, her voice cracked. "I didn't want to believe it," she whispered, "but I felt something was wrong." "Will you testify?" I asked. A pause. "Yes," she said quietly. "It's time." Meanwhile, I played nice. I sent a group text to the family chat, pretending like nothing had happened. Just a "Hey, I've been swamped with work. Hope everyone's doing well." Sean responded first. Casual, "Bro, why?" like always. Jessica said nothing. Mark replied with a thumbs-up emoji. I needed them comfortable, unaware. Next, I visited Sean's place under the pretense of checking in. We drank a couple beers, watched a game. I played the part of the apologetic brother, just trying to make things right. Then I steered the conversation. "So what's going on with Mom's house?" He groaned. "Jess is still pushing it. Mark's trying to get the closing fast-tracked." "She ever show you the documents?" "Nah. I figured she had it handled." "Think she got Mom's signature on everything legit?" Sean blinked. "Wait, you think she faked it?" I shrugged. "I think it's weird no one else saw it. I mean, wouldn't Mom want you to know she was moving?" That planted the seed. A week later, Sean called me back in a panic. "Dude," he said, "I asked Jess about the documents. She flipped out, said I was accusing her, told me to stop asking questions." "Interesting," I said. "She's hiding something, isn't she?" "Let's just say," I replied, "you might want to keep your hands clean. If this thing blows up, anyone who knew and didn't report it could get dragged in." He cursed under his breath. Now, Sean may not have been the sharpest tool in the shed, but he wasn't stupid. He started backing away, stopped answering Jess's calls. I didn't need him to pick sides. I just needed him not to protect her. The legal gears turned slowly, but surely. Lillian filed the paperwork. We requested an emergency hearing. Mark and Jess weren't served yet. That was coming soon, but the listing was flagged as under investigation. We bought ourselves time. The next part was risky, but it was the perfect bait. I scheduled a family meeting at Mom's house. Told everyone it was about clearing the air. Jess hesitated, but Mark agreed to come. I think he assumed it was going to be some awkward intervention. Maybe a chance to gaslight me again in front of Mom. They didn't know I'd installed a nanny cam in the living room. Didn't know my lawyer would be watching remotely. Didn't know I was about to hand them the rope. The morning of the meeting, I arrived early. Helped Mom tidy up. She looked nervous, but resolute. She wasn't going to let herself be pushed around anymore. "They won't see it coming," I told her. When Jess and Mark arrived, Mark walked in like he owned the place. Jess barely acknowledged me. "So," she said, settling on the armrest. "You wanted to talk?" "I wanted to give you a chance," I said calmly, "to tell the truth." Mark laughed. "Truth about what, exactly?" "About the sale," I replied. "About how you tried to transfer ownership of the house using a shell LLC in your name. About how you got Mom to sign documents she didn't read." Jess's face flushed. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" "Because I've seen the paperwork. And I've had a handwriting expert review the signature. It doesn't match Mom's." She opened her mouth, but I raised a finger. "You lied to Sean. You lied to Mom. And now, I've got a court date scheduled." Mark leaned forward, suddenly serious. "You think this is going to play out the way you want?" I tilted my head. I don't need it to play out. I just need it to surface. They looked at each other. And that's when it happened. Jess snapped. I did what I had to do, she hissed. She was drowning here. Alone. This place is falling apart. She needed someone to take over. She needed help. I said. Not control. You wouldn't understand, Mark said. You don't even live here. You're just the money guy. Not anymore. And in that moment, on camera, in Mom's house, in front of everyone, Jessica looked me in the eye and said the words I'd been waiting for. You were never part of this family. You were just a wallet we could borrow from. Mark didn't flinch. He just nodded, like she'd finally said what they both believed. I didn't speak. Didn't need to. Because the camera got all of it. And now? Now the stage was set. The fall was coming. And I had front row seats. The footage was undeniable. 3 days after the family meeting, the court granted our emergency injunction. The sale of the house was frozen indefinitely. Lillian didn't even need to argue much. The judge watched the video once, shook his head slowly, and said, I've seen enough. Jessica's exact words, you were never part of this family. You were just a wallet we could borrow from. Hit harder in the courtroom than I could have hoped. She looked stone-faced when it played, but Mark paled. For the first time, he seemed to realize this wasn't some casual disagreement or family squabble. It was real, legal, permanent. That hearing was just the beginning. Mom officially revoked the power of attorney Jess had tricked her into signing. Lillian filed the paperwork herself, and I drove Mom to the notary. On the way back, she looked out the window and whispered, I'm sorry, Caleb. I let them push you away. I didn't say anything right away. Just kept driving. Eventually, I said, I let them do it too. And that was the last time we talked about it. No blame. No therapy session breakdown. Just mutual acknowledgement. And for me, that was enough. The next part of the plan was slow and deliberate. Revenge, after all, is best served cold, but it's also best served through ironclad documentation. With Lillian's help, we initiated a civil case for financial misconduct and elder exploitation. It wasn't criminal yet, but it was enough to get discovery started. We subpoenaed Jessica's communications with the title company and Mark's LLC paperwork. Turns out, they'd planned the transfer of the house months before even talking to Mom. They'd even budgeted for renovation costs and listed projected rental income in the flip. They were going to flip our childhood home, rent it out, like it was a property in a spreadsheet instead of the living room we spent Christmases in, the kitchen where Dad taught me how to fix a leaky faucet, the hallway where Mom kept the growth chart pencil marks for all three of us. That's when the anger returned, but not the blind kind. The focused kind. Cold. Surgical. Once we had the documents, we sent them to the bank that held the mortgage on Mark and Jessica's house. I crafted a detailed letter, explaining their attempt to purchase another home under an LLC while committing financial fraud on a separate property. Included attachments, screenshots, and the court injunction. Banks take fraud seriously, especially when it threatens their investment. The result? Their pending refinance was immediately denied. Next, I contacted the HOA where Jess and Mark lived. Turns out, they were already on thin ice for not maintaining their lawn and ignoring repeated notices about a half-built shed in their backyard. I emailed the HOA board, very politely, and provided evidence of Jessica and Mark's shell company being used in a questionable real estate transaction. I didn't demand anything, just suggested it may be in their interest to look into it before someone got hurt, or before the story went public. A week later, their HOA fines tripled. They were given 30 days to bring their property up to code or face liens. And then came the co-signed debt. Remember that $10,000 line of credit I'd co-signed so they could buy their house? It was time to collect. I revoked the automatic minimum payments I'd been making and let the account fall into delinquency just long enough to trigger a notification. Then I contacted the lender directly and asked for a repayment plan that reflected my withdrawal as a co-signer. Since Jessica had violated the original agreement, co-signers must be informed of major credit usage. I had grounds to be removed. It took time, but eventually, I got a letter confirming the account was now solely her responsibility. They owed $8,700 on it. The kicker? Their credit tanked, fast. Mark tried applying for a new card in January. Denied. Jess applied for a small business grant. Denied. Their mortgage, their car, even their utilities suddenly became much harder to manage. Sean, To his credit, stayed out of it. After the video surfaced, he texted me 2 words, "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He wasn't the enemy. He was just someone who learned the hard way that silence has consequences. By April, the house sale was off. Mom stayed put. I hired a contractor, paid for with my own money, no credit, to add a stair lift and fix the plumbing. I brought her new curtains, replaced the old carpet in her bedroom. She cried when she saw the changes. "I don't deserve this," she said. "You deserve better," I replied. "This is just the start." And I meant it. Meanwhile, Jess and Mark were unraveling. They put a deposit down on a second home, assuming they could flip Mom's to cover the costs. When the sale froze, they lost the deposit. Their real estate agent dropped them. Word started getting around town that they were under investigation, not criminal, but still enough to make people uncomfortable. Then, in June, they got served with a formal notice from Lillian's office. We were suing them for damages, emotional and financial. And even though I told Lillian I didn't care about the money, she insisted. "This isn't just about revenge," she said. "It's about precedent." Jess tried to spin it on Facebook, posting cryptic messages like, "Funny how people pretend to care when it suits them, and family means nothing when greed is involved." I didn't respond, but a few of our mutual cousins did. One of them, Sophie, posted a comment that said, "You mean greed like stealing your mom's house?" The post was deleted an hour later. Eventually, Mark tried calling me. I let it ring. Then I got a voicemail. His voice was tired, beaten. "Look, man, I get it. You're mad. But this is getting out of hand. We could lose everything. Jess is breaking down. Just please, let's talk." I saved the voicemail in a folder labeled closure. We didn't talk. By late summer, they sold their house at a loss. Couldn't make the mortgage. The HOA had filed liens. The bank refused to refinance. They moved in with Mark's parents across the state. Jessica tried to keep posting like everything was normal, but even her Instagram started to fade. Less beach selfies, more pictures of sunsets and quotes about healing. No one was fooled. As for Mom, she's doing better. We talk weekly now, sometimes more. I don't push. I just show up, like I always did, but this time, without the need to be recognized for it. I replaced that need with something better: boundaries, strength, self-respect. And me? I started traveling. I visited Denver, then Portland. I took cooking classes, made new friends, reconnected with old ones. The fiddle leaf fig in my apartment? Still alive. Thriving, actually. I named it Walter. Don't ask me why, it just felt right. One night, not too long ago, Mom and I sat on the porch. The same one I stood on that snowy Christmas Eve when Jess slammed the door in my face. She looked out at the street and said, "You know, I used to think peace came from keeping everyone happy. But I've learned it comes from standing next to people who respect you." I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "Took me a while to learn that, too." We sat in silence for a bit. Fireflies blinked in the yard. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. The house smelled like warm coffee and wood polish. Eventually, Mom asked, "Do you think she'll ever apologize?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Maybe, but that's not what I'm waiting for." She nodded, and we sat a while longer. Because I wasn't waiting anymore. I had already won. And the best part? They never saw it coming.